In class 2, we're going to go over some mastering software and hardware, right? So really what we're doing here is we're getting into um, just some of the different software technology that's used and hardware technology. So on the pro end, historically, the vast amount, the majority of mastering has been done on the hardware side of things because really almost all of recording was done in the analog realm, up until probably the late 80s. And then, even then, people would still bring in analog masters into the mastering suite where it would get converted to digital. And so there is a difference between hardware components, particularly vintage hardware components, in terms of the way that they work. They have a different sonic characteristic than do software plugins. Even the software plugins that emulate those hardware pieces, they only get to a certain point of quality, right? And then, uh, okay, so is that is no luck, guys? Is that John? Were you the one still got no sound? Huh. Let me just kind of check in with you here, John. It's like, do you have a mic? Uh, so, huh. Well, yeah, that's interesting. Uh, Audio MIDI setup. Where's John when you need him? Anyway, so let's kind of go over it. So I'll kind of start that again and see if we can kind of help John sort this out. And if not, you could check out the replay. So the mastering software and hardware. So this is class 2. And what we're really going to go over here is mostly software driven, but I will show you some pictures of hardware technology because a lot of the mastering software is based off of the original hardware technology that was created. And so what we'll go through is some different plugins that are mastering specific. And many of these plugins actually are also used in mixing, okay? And so there are many versions of this, right? And so I have some basic pictures here of what some of that stuff is. So let's see if I can go up here to some of the mastering technology. So here, we have like some mastering specific processors. This is from Synopsys, right? And this is a multi-band limiter, okay, which sort of acts like an equalizer as well. And then you have the Manley Massive Passive, which is now, this is a famous hardware piece that's very good for mastering. It's a passive equalizer, right? That's really powerful unit that's used quite a lot in mastering studios, professional mastering studios, but it's also in plugin form. And so it gives you that same type of sound or same kind of sonic characteristic. There's something about passive equalizers that's very powerful in terms of the fact that they're very transparent. They're very clean, right? So they don't really affect the tonal characteristic at all of the audio that's passing through, right? So you have different types of plugins. We'll go through more of those sorts of things. Like this is a bunch of plugins from the T-Rax bundle, right? So if you go there, you can call up individual plugins. And many of these things are emulations of vintage gear like the LA2A, some like a Fairchild, a Pultec, etc. Right? So we have these different pieces of equipment, that have been emulated. There's companies that like the T-Rax, and then there's Isotope, right? These are for processing individual files, right? And this happens to be just the maximizer module from Ozone 5, but you can actually call up a whole series of plugins. So these two processors can show up in a single host application like Pro Tools or Logic or whatever, any host application. And then within it, it has a whole series of processors, right? So you can line them up in any order that you like. And then you can apply the processing that way. So when you actually apply the processing on that level, you can really order things around all within a single plugin unit, and they're standalone as well. So you can import an audio file, do some very basic editing, and process your file and export a result, right, that you would use for a single. Now, this only serves to a certain point because you can't master a whole CD, right, in this type of application. So then you start to go up to the next level, right, and which is like a Wavelab, right? So Wavelab is made by Steinberg, right, which also makes Cubase. And so they have a software that allows you to implement all of the things that are necessary for creating CDs and CD EPs and also mastering your track. So it gives you a bunch of tools, right? Metering tools and all different kinds of plugins that allow you to process the audio. This is one actually application you can get a 30-day trial on, and I am seriously considering that for this workshop. And then it's a matter of coming up with some stereo files that you guys can master, and then we can kind of go through the process that way. There's also I just have up quick here, Waveburner, right? So Waveburner is actually, I wouldn't do this because it was actually dropped by Apple, right? It was part of the Logic bundle, and they stopped supporting it a year or two ago. But, very simple basic software. You could see the individual songs and fade-ins and fade-outs and crossfades, and then there's, individual plugins, right, that we can get into, like some of the other plugins for software. Like these are some from the Waves bundle, right? This is an analog tape emulation, right? So you can apply some analog tape kind of depth and character to the sound, right? So we'll talk about where that's popular. Applying equalization, right? And this is, I really like this EQ by Waves. It's called the HEQ because it takes on or has the emulation of a lot of different EQ processors all in one, and you can selectively decide what those individual processes are, right? So we have that. We have some other analog technology, right? Bus technology, right? That we could put in, right? So some of these things fill out stuff, right? That's also cool. What do you got there? Aurora and Motu. Okay. Oh, you guys are still working out. Thanks for helping John out there. We could also apply reverb, right? There's some other upward limiter technology that can be added in. Multiband processor technology. I happen to really like the C6, right? Which if you've watched any of the Waves videos in the mixing class, I've showed you how much, that this is a really, really powerful device. There's also phase linear multiband, right, compressors, right? And then we have maximizing technology, right? So we can kind of work with this on this level or on the multiband level, right? Where we deal with multiband limiters, right? And kind of work with those processors where we can do peak maximization, right, of gain, of output gain on an individual band by band basis, right? And kind of work with things that way, right? So that's some of the things there, right? And then there's also restoration software. And this is where you get into denoising, declicking, getting sounds out of a mix or tape hiss, things like that. And that kind of gets into a whole other world. So we'll kind of touch up onto some of those things, right, as well through the process here. And go over some mastering hardware. So I'll show you some things there online, and that's the basics for that. So that's class 2.